You mentioned you've got a fourth book, right? Coming out
Yes.
this year. What's that one called?
So this one is 102 test box tips and tricks, and trying to follow the same pattern just for fun. But this one, I think, is sorely needed for developers and companies alike. Everybody wants to do testing. The majority don't do the testing, right?
ColdFusion Alive, the podcast for the ColdFusion community. Discover practices, tools, techniques, tips and trends for modern ColdFusion development. Brought to you by TerraTech, the ColdFusion experts. Develop, secure, optimize. Here is your host, the founder of TerraTech, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Luis Majano, CEO of Audis Solutions, and we're going to talk about four ColdFusion books that he's either written or about to publish real soon now. And welcome, Luis.
Gracias. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. It's been a long time.
It has been too long, but we're making up for lost time. For those of you who don't know, Luis, he originally was born in El Salvador, and then he moved to Houston, Texas, and he's been doing ColdFusion for decades now. And Audis Solutions is the company he founded together with his brother. And big team now, not only in the United States, but also in El Salvador. There's a team as well. And they make all those box products, ColdBox, command box, test box. In fact, you think of any English word and you can put box after it. Probably there is a box product either created or coming. Trying, yes. No, incredibly productive, Luis. Really appreciate everything you do in the ColdFusion community. And also you guys started the Modernize or Die podcast. So another great contribution there. So today we're going to talk about the books you've written. There's two you've published we're going to talk about, and I actually have one in my hand here that I'll just wave around, signed by the author at CF Summit. That book, in case you couldn't read it as I waved it around, is Modern CFML CFML in 100 minutes. So we'll talk about that. Also, 102 ColdBox HMVC tips and tricks. And then two new books coming out this year, one about command box, one about test box. And there are even other books we are not allowed to talk about that you published in the past that will remain secret and hidden. But
well, they're still up to date if you're using older versions, If you're using older versions of that software, they're still relevant.
Okay, well then maybe we will mention them.
Yeah.
So tell us about the first book that you published, Learn Modern CFML in 100 minutes. So why did you write this? It's been a few years. It's about 3 years since I think you published this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this actually, the first kind of brunt of the workload was done by Mike Hanky. Great guy. Met him a long time ago. Actually, I have to catch up with him. But Mike Hanky took the time to kind of start this idea of CFML in 100 minutes, which was made famous by Ruby, right? So Ruby created an online book, an online trend called 100, Ruby in 100 minutes, or Ruby on Rails in 100 minutes, or something like that. I think it was just Ruby in 100 minutes. And Mike kind of started it, and he put it on GitHub, and it kind of got a little bit of traction, but I don't think he ever completed it. And I spoke to him and say, hey, I wanna do a modern version. Can I just grab some of this content? And he agreed, and then basically I started this initiative. And as you know, we're trying to revive and kind of disseminate that CFML and ColdFusion is modern, right? This is the stigma that we have, that it's a language that has been around for many years now. People still think that it's the same language that it was 20 years ago, right? Like with anything, it has evolved just like the other languages that have been going on around, like PHP and Java, which people still think that PHP is still very legacy, and it has some modern concepts as well. So that was my idea, is I want to take this to the next level. I want to basically provide a modern approach to the language and treat this as not only for newbies. It was mostly targeted for newbies, to tell you the truth, but it has grown into also a nice reference, right? for people to actually say, hey, I want to see what's up with the variable scopes, or, what about null and nothingness, right? Or threading, right? So we try to appease both kind of sides, the newbies and the advanced folks. But my intent was definitely, okay, let's take this and push modern CFML, document all the new modern constructs, how to document, how to write, and we still have big plans for it right now. It's been, like you said, about 3 years since the initial version. So it's time for, it's been kept up to date, especially a lot by the community. This was a great thing since it's open source. So I've gotten tons of pull requests. I can look up how many pull requests we have received, but tons of pull requests, and it's still up to date. And we just want to keep updating it. I want to add more integrations with what's the service that actually allows you to execute CFML, try CFML. So I want to add those so you can actually have little snippets that you can actually execute and start working with it.
Now, you said something interesting there, because when I think of buying a book, and I've got a print book here of this one, I can't really do a pull request. I mean, I can pull out the pages, but you're saying this book is not just a print book, it's actually in Git or some similar open source repository. Is that true?
Yes. So this was my gift to the community. And in all reality, I didn't want to make any money out of it. It wasn't about the money. It was more about basically for us to push forward, right? And somebody has to push. So that was the intent. Let's open source this. Let's make sure it's out there, that the entire community can collaborate and contribute from it, right? And so it's on GitHub. So basically, we use a service called GitBook, which is what we actually use for all of our documentation. Great company, great products. Really a shout out to them, because we manage all the documentation for everything that we have. We have over 50 books for documentation online, thanks to them. They sponsor us, and big shout out to them. But we use that. So this allows us to provide collaboration. Like you said, you can't pull out the pages, or, remember the good old days, you had the errata email, right? That people would email the errata and say, oh, there's a typo on page 53, right? But now you can just go on page 53, click edit in GitHub. There's a little button there, and you go to GitHub, you edit it, you add your collaboration, and you get immortalized in the book. Wow.
So you have hundreds of contributors who've given you suggestions or corrections, and you can see all of them in their GitBook repository.
Yes, definitely.
Very excellent. And then also you can buy a print book from Amazon, or the Kindle version, or I guess you can go to the Autis website and buy the PDF if you want to.
Yeah, so the printed version is from probably a year and a half, and it'll be due with an update pretty soon here. So that one, of course, we have to keep up to date. So basically what happens is that when it comes to a time where we say, okay, it's ready for a cut, we basically actually have a command box module that actually creates the PDF for us, and actually adds all kinds of nice styles and printed stuff. And then we can use that and send it to Amazon, and then Amazon will publish it.
Wow. Are you telling me that you take the GitBook and you use some ColdFusion code to make a PDF that's then sent off to Amazon?
Yes. Actually, that's a very interesting. We should make a webinar of that.
Absolutely. That's very cool. Using ColdFusion technology itself to publish the book.
Yeah, actually, let me send you I didn't put the link for you, but that seems very interesting.
Yeah, add the link into the show notes. We'll add that in. I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm going to share the screen so folks can see the Learn More Than ColdFusion in 100 minutes and see what we're talking about for those who are on video. I'll talk it through for those of you who are not on video once I get my share screen to work. There we go. And I think I moved off the wrong tab. So here we are. You can see there's a table of contents on the left side. We've got an introduction. What is ColdFusion? It talks about command box, because, of course, that's the way to do ColdFusion these days. And then it goes into detail on different aspects of the ColdFusion language, how different kinds of variables and scopes and JSON and numbers and all kinds of other modern things there. So if you go to modern-cfml.com, cfml.autisbooks.com. You can see that. And then there's even bonus stuff here on application CFM and file handling and all kinds of other stuff. So, and then if you dig into any of these things, let me just dig into the variable scope, then you've got the chapter in the book, and it has some code examples and explains it all. So now, what's all this stuff on the right-hand side? This is the contents of the section.
Yes.
And then there's a link to go to GitHub to edit material. So if we go on that, it'll zip over to GitHub, and I'm guessing, what's this? It's some ColdFusion code. So here's the GitBook, and you can see you've got the same content as the book, but now you can make changes and do a pull request or whatever you want to do if you see a mistake or you see something that you think should be added. So very cool. So
yeah,
just stop the share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that GitBook exporter was built by Brad and Scott Steinbach. So it's pretty sweet. It actually uses a command box task, and basically it uses the export of GitBook, and it goes through the book basically and builds this awesome PDF using ColdFusion. So we actually use ColdFusion to actually build the book, and that produces this awesome, great PDF. They really went all out on it because it allows you to do a table of contents. It allows you to even style it. You can do coverage image files. You can do like different highlighting themes, page numbers. They went all out, really. And so it was really fantastic. So that's what we use for the printed books.
That's excellent. And is it really true you could learn ColdFusion, modern ColdFusion in 100 minutes, or is that a bit of a publishing hyperbole?
Well, you know what? I tried to, and this is something that I took with the newbies that we had from Ortus SV, and I'm gonna actually start timers next time because that was the intent, is to actually see if I could actually do it in 100 minutes. Go through the first portions, right, in 100 minutes. So the last time I did it in less than 100 minutes, but obviously I already knew the language, right? So I don't count.
There you go. Well, it's a great resource. Excellent book. Very clearly written, Luis. Good job on that. And I think it really is something every ColdFusion developer should check out. If you're not sure whether you want to buy the print book or the Kindle book, just go on the free version and read it a bit and see if it's useful before you pay money. So, but even if you've been doing ColdFusion for 10 or 20 years, I think you're going to learn new stuff in here because it's hard to keep up to date with all the new stuff that's being done in ColdFusion.
Yeah, definitely. And we have an intent right now. Obviously, I'm writing the other books we're going to be talking about, but my intent is to actually, for each section, is to actually do a small video for each section, and then put that as a CFCast series. So that is still something that it's in the roadmap for us, is that once we do our big push update for it and get new printed books, is to actually do a video session for each of those sessions. So apart from having the written book, you will also be able to have the videos for each of those, but those will be basically a CFCast series that you would have to purchase and subscribe to get access to all the videos.
Yeah, I just interviewed Eric Peterson about what's cool in CFCasts, so I'll link that episode in there. And if you haven't checked out CFCasts, listeners, then it's an amazing video training for not just box products, but does database and other ColdFusion stuff. So definitely worth checking out. Let's move on to your second book that you've published, 102 ColdBox HMVC tips and tricks. Now, why is it 102 and not 100?
A mouthful, huh?
It was a bit of a mouthful. Yes.
I know. It was done with a purpose like that. It was jokingly done like that so it could be long. But basically, the idea was to do just 100 tips, right? Just, like everybody does, like, the 7 steps to success, or, for all these numbers. So we just said, okay, I'm going to do 100 tips, right? That was my intent, right? And then I remember hearing a podcast. I think it was Craig Rochelle. He's a a pastor, and he's also a leadership coach and stuff like that. And he was like interviewing one person. I can't remember who he was interviewing with, and he was like, they had done 101 push-ups, right? And they were like, it was because it was more than 100, right? And then we got into the joke, like, okay, but 2 is more than 101. So we're going to go the extra mile on this one. So it just became a joke inside of Vortex of basically saying that we wanted to be just dumb overachievers, basically. So we are like, no, we're going to go even beyond the 101 to 102. So Brad actually wanted to do 103 for Command Box because he said he wanted to be better than the ColdBox one.
Oh, but he didn't. He did 102, I think.
Well, it's still in debate right now.
Oh, it's in debate. Okay.
It's in debate.
Well, cool.
This podcast is brought to you by TerraTech, the ColdFusion experts. Develop, secure, optimize. Get detailed show notes on today's episode and your free CF Alive Modern ColdFusion Guide at terratech.com. That is TerraTech.com. And now back to today's show.
Well, cool. So why did you write this book?
I think this was once we started having CFCasts and it was getting, we're getting all these snippets of videos and all these series, and people really learn from small, biteable, chewable kind of episodes, right? So I said, well, why don't we do the same for ColdBox? Everybody wants little tips, and there's lots of tips and tricks that we have, obviously building the actual libraries, right? So I said, it would be cool if actually I just did like a little tips and tricks, small chewable, tutorials and guides, and put them on book format. So that's how it came about. And I started one morning and basically started writing 5 tips every morning. So every morning I would dedicate 30 minutes, and those 30 minutes I write 5 tips and continue. So I kind of came addicted to it, and every morning just writing these tips, and it was great. I got some from the team. The team gave us really good feedback on it, and the intent is also to make videos. So there'll be another video series for these tips and tricks, so that way people not only have the chewable bites in book format and readable format, but they also have the chewable bites in video format.
Excellent. So who is this book for?
Really, this is for all kinds of ColdBox users. There's tips for newbies, right? There's tips for those that are started to use the platform already. And there's also for the advanced ones. We have several advanced tips on this as well. So we try to cater for all the different levels of ColdBox users here. So some might be very newbie style, right? We try to put those at the beginning. So the book will progress from very simple tips to the more advanced tips.
Whoops. They're very cool. So this book is only an ebook and a print book. Is that true? Or does it also have the GitBooks thing going on?
No, this one is right now just ebook, like you say, and PDF. It's not in printed format at this point. I'm not sure.
Oh, there's no print book.
No, there's no print book for these ones. We actually tried a different platform for writing the book on this one. So we're still in consideration to do it. Obviously, getting the ebooks and the PDFs out are easier than the printed ones, right? Then you have to deal with versions with the prints and stuff like that. So we're still considering it. I think if people really want it, we would do it. So if you're interested, let us know, and we'll do a printed book.
Very good. So this book is only available on the Autis site, either as a PDF or an ebook. You can't get this one on Amazon, I don't think. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So these books right now are just ebooks. They're PDFs. We use a new writing platform for them to create these PDFs, so they look really nice as well. Yes. And because it's not open, it's closed. And we do have plans to print it if people have interest in it. So if you're interested in receiving these as printed books, then we'll definitely do it. Very
good. Yes. What's the new PDF book generation thing you're using, if you're allowed to say?
Yeah, so we use an app called Ulysses. So Ulysses has been around for quite some time, and really enjoy working on it because it can synchronize with all my devices, so I can focus on working on that. But that is why basically ultimately I just need a PDF to send to the prints, but we never did it. So if people are interested in the print, then we would do it.
Excellent. And then what kind of things, I was looking on the Autis website and I see the page for the book and I see some cool things. Let me just bring that up so folks can see that who are watching on video, and I'll talk it through for the folks who are not on video. So here you can see a cute cover of the book with Super Autis Man, or whatever that guy is called. Or is that? Yes. Carrying a light bulb with 102 tips, and you can get 10 tips free. And here are what's included: environment variables, fluent if statements, command box, ColdBox commands, using a struct for query strings, and so on. So those are the first 10 tips that went on. Lots of cool stuff. I thought those were sections in the book, but they're actually the first 10 tips. And
yeah, actually, you can see all of the tips there. So if somebody's interested in say, hey, I want to see,
can scroll through.
Yeah. You can see
okay. Yeah, I can
tips.
see. Yeah, let me just quickly scroll through. So lots of cool tips you can get there if you're doing ColdBox. And sorry, my brain doesn't work with so many box products. It's hard to pick the right one, you know. And for those of you who don't know, ColdBox is a ColdFusion framework. So it's an object-oriented framework for organizing your code and making app development easier. So, tip. Yeah, definitely. I just checked. There are 102 tips in there. I thought for a moment there it was going to say only 100. So, and then here's how you can order it on the page as well. So that's that book. Now, have people been giving you new tips to add into this, or because it's not open source, so it's a little hard to for people can't do a pull request on this, but can readers tell you other ideas, or how does that work?
Well, I think that's a great idea to bring up. I think it's something that we want to add on the website where people can submit their tips and for the next kind of write through. So we'll be adding that, and then if somebody wants to add a tip or wants to see something or request something or a tip to be written, we want to make sure the communication's there so we can get it and write it.
Fabulous. So those are the two books that you've published. There are also some books we'll mention in a moment that you did publish in the past but are a little out of date. And so let's talk about the two books that are going to be completely up to date, that are coming out real soon now. The first one is 102 command box tips and tricks. So tell us about that.
So this is actually Gavin's idea. So Gavin Pickin from the Modernize or Die podcast wanted to see a command box tips and tricks as well. So we were like, okay, let's do it. And I set up the organization for it, and we're starting to write it. And we're going to get more tips from internally in Ortus and start right. But it started already. Takes a few months to kind of compile and go through this. So I'm expecting at least to have something by fall. So hopefully by Into the Box, that would be a great.
When's Into the Box this year?
Yes, it is in September. Last week of September.
Last week of September. And have you decided where you're going to have it, or is that still a mystery?
It is here in the Houston area. We're having 4 venues that we're deciding on. We're trying to do a little change up for our location. We want to do it a little bit more fun. So we're still in negotiations, but it'll still be in the Houston area in September 27, 28, and 29. Actually, 28, 29, and 30.
It's a 3-day event this year.
Yes, so we are bringing the workshops back again. So finally, we're bringing the workshops again. So we're going to have 1 day full of workshops and then the 2 days of conference.
Very nice. So you're hoping you'll be able to launch this book, and it sounds like this is a bunch of tips for beginners and medium and advanced users of CommandBox. Would that be accurate, or did I get totally confused?
No, we're trying to do the same thing as the ColdBox one, right? We want to target the newbies, the mediums, and the advanced. So that is the intent for the CommandBox one, for sure.
And for those who don't know, CommandBox is a really great way to run ColdFusion servers, to have a command line interface to ColdFusion, to do package management. It probably does a whole bunch of other things I'm forgetting. But and I recently had Brad on the show, and he was telling us about all these add-ons, extensions, I think they're called, that he has created or other people created for CommandBox. So I'll link that in the show notes. But if you guys listening haven't tried out CommandBox, I mean, I don't think it's mandatory that everyone in the ColdFusion world should use CommandBox, but like it's a very good suggestion because it makes your life easier.
Yeah, I think that you have to go back to the modern approaches, right? And if you go to a JavaScript guy and you ask him, how do you do dependencies? He's going to say NPM, right? Or how do you actually execute things on the CLI? He's going to say NPM, right? Go to a PHP guy, he's going to say Composer, right? So we have all this. We have had all this in CFML for a long time, and I think that it's still prevalent that people do not know that ColdFusion has a fully fledged package manager available to them, right? In combination with ForgeBox, they can publish.
Wait a minute. I'm just going to interrupt you there. Some people listening may not even know what a package manager is and why they should use one.
That's a great question.
What is a package manager?
So let's say the good old days, right? The good old days, I'm building a new CFML app. I know I built the CFC that did file manipulation, right? It's somewhere on this project. I'm going to go get it, right? I'm going to copy paste it and put it in my new project. I know I'm going to use maybe jQuery, right? So I'm going to go get a jQuery library from another project or the web, put it in my includes folder. And then maybe I use my own security for my application. So I'm going to go get another, couple CFCs that I built previously, right? And just copy paste them into my new project. And that was the way it was, right? It was like you're scouring your file system and you're scouring the internet for all these, utilities and composed set of features in order to start building your new app, right? And that's just the way it was, right? That's the way it was. So, later on, Git came along, right? And you have the concept of Git modules and Git submodules, and you were like, oh, I'm going to separate them now into different, repositories, right? So now these libraries were pseudo reusable, right? Because they could be separate have its own life cycle on its own Git repository, and then I would bring them into submodules, right? And that was kind of like the poor man's package management, right? With the advent of all these tooling in many languages, right, the concept was to have a CLI tool that would basically scour a repository or a directory for you for these packages, right? And the package is basically one file or many files. That's it. As long as it has one descriptor, right, an actual file that can tell you what the name of that package is, the version that it is, and that's it, right? That's the only thing that is required, the name, the slug, and the version. So this way, you could take that old kind of approach where you did things manually, basically, and say, okay, there's a software directory that's available to me. I can actually search for packages and pieces of software in that directory. The CLI will install it for me, right, in the right place, in the right location, and then manage it for me, right? If there's updates, I can just type outdated, and it will tell me which packages are outdated, right? Because maybe I am not the author of these things, right? Maybe I'm using a manipulation library or an array library, a collection library. So the intent is to bring maintenance down by reusing projects and libraries that you or the community has built, right? And this is really important for modern development because you don't want to reinvent the wheel all the time, right? We need to be agile. Deadlines are here, right? We need to be doing things rapidly now. And most of these libraries and pieces of software that other people have built, there's a whole gamut, right? From the really badly written to the ones that are, written and published worldwide with tons of tests and coverage and documentation, which is at least what we try to do, right? But this is so important for modern developers. This is not for ColdFusion developers, they're for all developers, right? In any language, you need to be using some type of package management to bring sanity and organization to your organization. There's so many tools to even tell you about things like security risks, right? So Pete Freitag, our security guru in the ColdFusion world, right, has several command box packages that you can use to scan other packages to make sure that they don't have vulnerabilities, right? So you start getting into all this advanced features of the language that are there, right? And I believe ForgeBox is almost 1,000 modules right now, right? So you have over 1,000 libraries that are available to you as a developer for you to do your job, right? And if a library doesn't do exactly what you want, well, fork it, add what you want and send it back to the author, right? But it still baffles me that in the CFML world, people are not using this advanced tooling, and then they go to a node, for example, and they see NPM, they're like, oh, this is beautiful, this is great, right? And it's like, we have the same, right? And even better, right? We might not have all the packages that an NPM ecosystem has yet, right? But the tooling that we have offers so much more than the majority of these package managements. Command Box has evolved so much into task management, package management, REPL tools, the server portions on it. I mean, we're basically running everything on Command Box for production now. It is even faster or the same as even some Nginx or Apache web servers, right?
Wow.
In terms of serving files, Brad has done a huge, extensive optimizations on this for production that, even if you just start it up as a traditional web server, it is as fast as an Nginx and as an Apache with lower memory footprints. This is not by our doing. We actually use an open source project called Undertow, which basically powers JBoss, the Wildfly project. So, and we are collaborators actually with JBoss. We're actually contributors to the JBoss project. And, it just is a very scalable, high performant servlet engine, right? So the Command Box has all these facets, but it all started with package management, right? We wanted to bring the sanity of organizing your code, right? So you don't have to do things manually, and there's so much room for error nowadays if you start doing things manually like that, right? You're copy pasting from something that maybe had a security vulnerability, right? Which happens all the time, right? So at least with this, you can even just run a command and it can tell you, okay, these are outdated, these have security risks, right? Or maybe these ones cannot be used in an organization, right? So it's really important for any developer to start leveraging these modern tools for their development. Long
this
answer.
Could be a whole, long. It was epic answer. Cool for everyone to be using packages, to use open source modules from ForgeBox. I have talked to some folks who seem confused whether a company even allows them to use open source, but I think if you just use it, you're not going to get into trouble.
Yeah, I think
maybe in
sentiment...
some hyper secure government organization, maybe they get excited, but I think your average organization, they like to save time, get things done faster. So
even in government, they've even had strict mandates that things should move into the open source arena, and it might be counterintuitive, but the when it's open, you actually can see vulnerabilities, yes, but people can patch those vulnerabilities, right? It's not the same as just having a team of 4 people or a team of thousands around the world that are collaborating and helping the platform stay secure, right? So that's a big advantage of open source.
Definitely is. So check out 102 Command Box tips and tricks. And there's also separately an ebook or tutorial for getting started with Command Box. It's not really a book. It's more like an online thing. So I just want to mention that to folks if they're like, well, wait a minute, I haven't even got started with Command. Not that it's hard. All you have to do is download the program and run the executable. I mean, it doesn't even require an installation.
Correct.
It's not whatever. Really
we try to make it really easy for you. Just download the binary, start up the binary, and you're in our shell, and you're good to go.
Yep. Yay! Now, you mentioned you've got a 4th book, right? Coming out this year. What's that one called?
So this one is 102 Test Box Tips and Tricks. and trying to follow the same pattern just for fun. But this one, I think, is sorely needed for developers and companies alike. Everybody wants to do testing. The majority don't do the testing, right? So I think apart from giving the test box tips, I think I might just squeeze in a TDD and BDD word in there, which also makes it longer for play for words there. But I think it's so important.
What was that word for people who don't know what you're talking about? It sounded kind of kinky. TB, BDSM, something?
Yes, no.
Test-driven development.
Test-driven development would be TDD, and then BDD would be behavior-driven development.
Oh, so what's the difference between those two?
So
test-driven development sounds like you write the tests first, then you write the code. Is that
correct?
True,
apart from that, obviously, this is a process, right? So test-driven development is the process of beginning with the tests, right? Beginning with those specifications for a unit, for a specific unit, right? And that will be a specific CFC, for example, right? And then you write the tests, you write the implementations, you verify, you refactor, you start the process again, right? But the concept of TDD is focused on the unit, right? And this is something that, yeah, it's great, but eventually it can become very boring, right? And you end up doing basically what's, in a real life application, your one component doesn't do everything, right? There's a collection of components, right? And not only if you're doing components, but let's say you're having an MVC framework, right? Then you have handlers, right? You have views, you have layouts, right? And then you also have your business logic. So then you start writing all these units, and then you start basically creating mocks or situations where you can't have control of inputs and outputs, right? So you have to start creating, these kind of virtual or mockable objects in order just to verify that if statement actually works, right? So TDD in concept is fantastic, right? It's great, but it has its limitations, right? And I can tell you by experience that it gets you into what I call a developer paralysis, right? Because I'm there and I'm paralyzed now, because now in order just for me to test one function, I've created over 20 lines of mockable objects and mocks just to test one function, right? So it can be very tedious. It can give you that sense of paralysis where, oh my God, what am I doing this? I'm spending so much time now doing this test code. And the truth is that most of the time we're going to write code that's pretty much untestable sometimes, right? That's a fact, right? So then we have to start thinking, how do we refactor our code so it actually becomes testable, right? Some cases we can't even create mocks, right? So it's not easy. Let's put it that way, right? It can start very easy. The typical examples, even the test block examples that we have online for TDD are like a calculator, right? But in real life scenarios, it takes time, it takes focus, and it takes discipline, right? And I would be adventurous to say that the majority of developers have that small ADD where they don't want to do that, right? They want to get their job done, right? And get verified and move going. So TDD, even though it's great, right, it has its limitations. So BDD is basically the evolution of that, right? So the tooling has basically enhanced and basically to provide a behavior-driven development. So in this case, instead of focusing on the unit, you focus on your requirement, right? So this is basically like unit, you start from the bottom, right? From the inside and you go out, right? But with BDD, you go from out to in, right? So it's basically a matter of perspective to see now how you want to write this requirement. So there's even different languages, because I believe it's a language called Cucumber, for example, which allows you to write these feature files in human language, right? And probably people have heard the concept of a feature and then given some type of scenario, when, then, right? So they start writing in an English approach, right? And instead of looking at a specific unit, you're going to basically test a collection of units, right? And that could become into integration testing, right? Because let's be honest, sometimes, yes, I want to make sure that a CFC function actually validates, right? Let's say a very tricky algorithm or, something that has to deal with money. I want to make sure that that algorithm is fully tested. Most of the time, 90% of the time, you just need to verify, a collection of CFCs working together to give you that your requirement actually works, right? How do you work that an order is made? Well, an order could encompass, right, making sure that you move all those products into an order is created, right? An email is sent, a confirmation is sent to the admin, the inventory is decreased. There's all these requirements and scenarios that need to happen, right? That you will never get to validate in a unit, right? So BDD is that evolution of TDD to take you to the next level, to focus on your requirements, right? Who cares about the single function? Right? That maybe it's just calling a down.
We only care when it has an error.
Exactly. And that's good. And that's good because that's only when you care, right? Yeah. Because the reality is that you will never test everything, ever. Mm-hmm. That's a fallacy.
It is hard to test it all the code in an app.
It will be impossible, right? There are always scenarios that you didn't account for, right? And it is just better to say whatever. Test your requirements. If your requirements are tested, you have a very good chance, right, that your product works. Mm-hmm. When there are scenarios that come, right, and they will come, right, you will create specific either units or more, alterations to your requirements to validate, right, that scenario now passes, right?
I mean, I think a kind of compromise here, do the behavior-driven development, high-level testing in the code, but write some selected test-driven development. And maybe in two cases, like you're saying, when the module's complex, when the CFC is complicated, it probably deserves to have some testing written. But the other reason to write it is a bug actually occurred in the app. Maybe it would be good to put a test in to make sure the bug doesn't come back.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about balance. It's all about balance. Yeah. You really nailed it because it's all about balance. We always create canary tests.
I'm going to call it just-in-time testing.
Yes, JIT. Right? But we always start,
it's a bit like the other word that begins with SH that I won't pronounce on this show. But
well, that would be like that.
That would be some testing that people do.
Exactly. if they do it.
Sometimes people don't test. That's what the users are for, right?
But
so this book covers tips for using TestBox, which is the open source testing for want of a better word, library. I don't know. What do you call TestBox?
Yes. So TestBox is exactly that. It's a library for you to actually do TDD and BDD, right? It gives you the constructs and the capabilities to do that. It also gives you the ability to do mocking, right? It can actually do mocking of objects, mocking of data, mocking of JSON representations. It includes a library called mock data.
Has it taken over Mockbox? Has Mockbox disappeared and now everything that was in Mockbox is in TestBox?
So, a little bit of history here. So when I started this, I started with mocking first, right? In the good old days, we only had CF unit and MX unit, right? So in order for us to have mocking, I basically built Mockbox, right? And that was kind of my first adventure into the testing world. And Mockbox was standalone. It was just a helper for those doing CF unit and MX unit. Obviously, MX unit collapsed and it was no longer developed. And then TestBox is when it arrived. And basically, the library of mocking was absorbed into TestBox. And at that time, I still offered the two in parallel because MX unit was still going on at the time. But now, obviously, things have changed. So TestBox is a single library now that has a collection of modules inside of it to assist you with testing, right? As the Mockbox portions, right, which allow you to mock, right, which are no longer available standalone, right? We just use TestBox. So you have mocking capabilities, you have the BDD capabilities, you have the TDD capabilities, you also have code coverage capabilities as well with TestBox. And you also
that's the thing that integrates with Fusion Reactor, the coverage? Or?
Correct. Yes. So right now it integrates with Fusion Reactor. In the future, it might not. It might just be available to you. But it also introduces mock data, which is a project that our good old friend Ray Camden created a long time ago. And we kind of forked it, took over it, and it provides very extensive mocking facilities for you for APIs. So it can mock complete relationships.
Folks listening who have no idea what mocking is, basically you're stubbing out, a piece of code that hasn't been written yet, and you're feeding back sample data to the other modules that are calling it, so you can carry on with writing the program. Because if you've got hundreds of modules in an object-oriented program, you don't want to wait until the end to test the whole thing. That would be a disaster zone. You want to be able to have the program running from the first day, even if it's only showing sample data.
Yes, exactly.
More or less.
Definitely. And you can mock two types of things. You can mock objects and you can mock data. So mock objects is basically just creating even objects that don't exist, like you said. There are no excuses anymore. It's like, I'm waiting on John here to finish this component here so I can use it. It's like, nope. We're going to basically come to an agreement. We're going to create an interface, right? An agreement of what you're going to receive and what I'm going to get. And then I can create those stubs, which are empty objects, and I can manipulate them, right? I can create functions on it with different arguments and expect data in and data back, right? So that's the first approach to mocking is with objects. The second one is data, right? And we see this in the world of APIs that we live in, right? We need to be able to talk to external APIs and get some type of data representation back, right? And most of the time, I would suggest people not be hitting live APIs when they're doing their integration testing or testing. You can get banned. I have gotten banned from a few services before that will remain nameless, but I have been banned. So that's actually when I said, maybe I should start mocking these, right? So the mocking of data is essential too. So mock data is part of TestBox now, and it's very extensive right now. It allows you to create over 20 different types of data elements. You can create even your own if you wanted to. It actually comes with an embedded command box server, so you can actually mock an API with it, right? And with its own query language, so you can actually create and get data back as if you're getting it from an API, from a RESTful API. So it's gotten really fancy. So if people are actually building and integrating with APIs, mock data is your tool.
Are you sure 102 tips is enough to cover all this, Luis? I mean, I think you're going to need 204 tips,
We might go later. I'm not sure. I'm passionate about testing, for sure.
I can tell. It's exciting. Viva el testing,
Yes.
So
it has saved my butt so many times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all for testing the functionality, testing the how much resources the app uses before you let the real users loose on it, all kinds of testing.
And I think apart from covering those tips, I think I want to focus at the beginning on the theory of it, right? I think this is where people get held up, right? There's always the three questions. Why do it? What to do? And when to stop, right? So there's this kind of integral three-part questions of people always get
when
held
to stop.
Up.
Do you mean you could do too much of this?
Yes, for sure. You can do too much. I've done it, right? Oh. And that's when you start getting that paralysis. That's when you start getting bored. That's when you start getting, oh my God.
So tell me those three questions again. What?
The first one would be what to test, right?
Oh, what to test, yeah.
Right. What are you going to test? When to stop, right? And then the other one is why test, right?
This sounds very much like when I was younger and I used to drink far too much alcohol. I didn't have that when to stop question, I knew the why to drink. I knew what to drink, but I didn't know when to stop.
True. It happens.
I haven't done that in a lot of years.
Oh, yeah.
So
it happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, when is this book likely to emerge? I think you said sometime this year, but you have any further thoughts on that, or is it?
My goal is to have them both buy into the box in September. That would be my ultimate
launch.
Goal.
I'll make a note of that in show notes, and it's in writing.
Yeah. People can keep me accountable if I don't. That's fine.
Yeah. We will get a comedian in to give you a roasting, Hopefully he won't slap you around the face as well, but there you
go. No.
And then you do have some other books I saw on the Ortis site. If you go to ortissolutions.com/learn/books, there's a whole bunch of books there. But you're saying those are a bit on ColdBox and Wirebox and CacheBox and Logbox and CommandBox and ContentBox. And they're basically tutorials or the documentation? Or
so this is basically the documentation, right? So this is the documentation that's available online and free, of course. But we always created printable books out of them. We haven't done that in a long time. The old versions are still available as printed books there. And mostly if people are using an old ColdBox 264 version or an ColdBox 3 version, the books are available for historical purposes. But we haven't had a need to create printed versions out of the docs Most of the people right now are just doing online and PDF. If there ever is people that are interested and they pester us and they say, hey, we want printed books, we can make it happen. But at this point, they're there for historical purposes, so they can actually use them.
All right. Well, very cool. So anything else you want to tell me about books you've written or are going to write?
So actually, I'm putting a link there in your show notes. But if you actually go to orchesbooks.com, this is basically a little ColdBox Vue.js app. And it lists out pretty much all our frameworks, all our printable books, all our modules. And what we're doing is we're aggregating all the docs and all the books that we're writing for commercial products, open source products, and created a little Vue.js app so you can actually find what you need. We've grown quite a bit.
So it does. So. It lets you search through the text of all the books. Is that what you're saying?
Not yet. Not yet. We're working on that.
Not yet.
But right now, it basically is basically like a huge directory of all the products and major modules that we write documentation for. And if you go there and you write quick, you'll get the quick ORM, and you can go to the docs or the getting started guide. So we're trying to make this as a hub for all the documentation. We've grown quite a bit.
Excellent.
So that's why.
Yes, there's a lot of documentation out there, so it's great to be able to search for things. And so many books you've published, or going to publish. So congrats on that. So let's wrap up the show just asking you today, currently when we're recording this, it's March in 2022. Why are you proud to use ColdFusion today, Luis?
Great question. So, I think we're proud, obviously, because we've been doing it for quite a while. Me personally, have done several languages, not only ColdFusion. I actually started with assembly language. That was one of my first ones. Basic, I did electrical engineering, so I was very focused at the low level. But at the experience of using many languages, from C++ to C#, to Java, to Groovy. There was a time where I actually was doing a lot of Groovy at one point. So I always end up doing ColdFusion. I know there's a lot of improvements that have gone into Java. I love Java now more than ever before. We're starting to do even a lot more Java at Orchis right now. But CFML always comes into that ease of use, right? And all the tooling that we've done around the language just makes us so productive. We have been able to create lots of solutions for our customers. We're actually starting to build even SaaS applications right now for the public. We made an announcement last year for a product, SaaS available called Timebox. This is going to be a full SaaS implementation for any company to do invoicing, employee management, timesheets, right? Time tracking, reporting. And this is all built using CFML and on all our tooling, right? And we were able to do it in about 4 months, right? So I think the testament of rapid application development with CFML still stands. And we want to build as much tools as we can for developers to build it even faster.
Fabulous. Well, ColdFusion is an excellent language. And as you mentioned, I think both of us are working on making ColdFusion more alive and modern. What would it take to make ColdFusion even more alive this year, in your opinion?
I think it's people need to start building solutions, right? I think nowadays you're not going to convince somebody just by, hey, look at my if statement, or look at my closure, or look at my dynamic access points, right? I think those days are gone. I think the majority of languages nowadays have their specific intricacies, their specific ways to handle things, but the majority of them are very similar nowadays, right? The major differences are between static and dynamic, right? But the languages are there, right? They've evolved so much. So I think at this point, it's just a matter of building cool solutions, right? This is something that we've been wanting to do. That's why we created ContentBox as a CMS solution. We're actually going to be relaunching our e-commerce platform in the coming months as well. And that's why I believe the community, if they want to see this community move forward, they need to start building cool solutions and making noise, right? They need to make noise, right? If you don't know about it, then nobody does, right? So I think that for me, it's important that the community get involved And if they have something cool that they built, release it, right? If they have a SaaS, announce it, right? I think it's a matter of me, like you said, being proud of the technology stacks decisions that you've made, right? And go forward, right? And I know that the vendors have a lot of work to do, right? In terms of improving themselves, right? We're not blind to that, right? I think that they can be doing even a lot more, right? Both vendors that do the CFML engines, we're very transparent with that. And we say, hey, you guys need to improve. I believe they can improve by 1,000%.
I'd love to hear your thoughts separately on that. I think we're nearly out of time on this one, but I'm doing a roundtable this week with some developers and talking about Adobe ColdFusion 2021 versus Lucy 5.3 and how do they compare in all the different aspects. So,
yeah.
And I started a discussion there's a ColdFusion programmers Facebook group that has a few thousand folks in it. And I just started a discussion in there about that. A lot of interesting ideas about that. And it's not really a clear cut, one is better than the other. I think they both have good points and things they could improve. So, Into the Box Web Development Conference 2022 coming up in September, merely 5 months away. Ooh, I think it's five or six. What are you looking forward to in this year's Into the Box?
Well, we're going to have a new venue. It'll be a lot more fun. It'll probably attract people that can bring their families. Well, not sure yet. And other things that we're going to be having is our workshops. I think we're really excited to be able to start training people in person again and make it affordable for them to come and just train with us, right? We're actually trying also to get other speakers from other languages and other big speakers. So we're trying to see if they can come. We're actually negotiating with them to see if they also will do workshops as well with us. So we're trying to go big here as well.
Well, that sounds very exciting. But of course, it's still going to contain lots of cool ColdFusion and Box content, I hope.
Yes, definitely. So this is our launch pad for all the new boxes that we're building, all the new.
There's going to be new boxes?
There's always new boxes. There has to be new boxes. So
maybe you should have a product called New Box,
Yeah, we can't sit still, We're actually having our developer summit this week. So new boxes are going to come out of it. All the folks, Excellent. All the people are coming here to Houston tomorrow. And we're going to be doing our retreat for 5 days. So stay tuned. There might be new boxes by the end of the week.
I'd love to hear about those when you're able to publicly talk about them. So fabulous. If people want to find you online, what are the best ways to do that?
Yes, definitely. So you obviously can go to orchesolutions.com or you can go to luismajano.com. We're actually going to be revamping that one as well. Twitter @elmajano and LinkedIn as well, elmajano. So those are the easiest ones to remember. Or elmajano@orchesolutions.com.
Fabulous. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, and thanks for all you do to make ColdFusion more modern and exciting. And have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode in your free CF Alive Modern ColdFusion Guide at teratech.com. That is teratech.com. Viva la CF Alive Revolution!